We talk a lot about gut health on this channel as it is associated with hiatal hernia syndrome, which as its root driver is inefficient, suboptimal gut health. But I want to also talk to you about gut health, specifically insulin resistance, and how it is linked to heart disease, our number one killer, as well as cancer. So let's start with heart disease, and it is insulin resistance is the main driver to heart disease. Now, if we're looking at our metabolic profile or metabolic markers, how do we know if we have insulin resistance? You can look at your triglyceride level, you can look at, and they should be very, very normal. So what do I mean by that? There's a, depending on the doctor that you use and the lab that he or she uses, they can have a very broad range of levels before they consider you to be too high or too low. So what I would do is I would actually Google optimal levels of these numbers so that you can make sure you're really in that optimal range and you're not just hovering on the high range, which really isn't optimal. It might be quote unquote normal, but it's really not optimal. So depending on your lab and where you live, because I know I have international viewers, is just look it up online and just say optimal specifically. And you can say functional medicine and optimal too, because we have a very narrow criteria of what optimal is. And again, normal is really too broad a term. So I want to make sure you're really in the optimal. So there's triglyceride level, there's your HDL level, and that's considered your good cholesterol, but you want to make sure that that's really good versus just borderline or low. Then there's your waist circumference, and for men, that should be less than 40 inches, and for ladies, less than 35 inches. Another easy way to do it is to take your height in inches and divide that in half, and you should be less than that as far as your waist circumference. So waist circumference, when it's too high, shows visceral fat, and that's the dangerous fat, and again, that's associated with insulin resistance. Then we have high blood pressure or borderline high blood pressure. So it was several years ago now that the blood pressure number was changed a bit to determine what is really high blood pressure versus what we talked about. So forever we've talked about 120 over 80. Now they say the ideal blood pressure is under 120 over 80. And then if the systolic, that top number, that 120 that we're referring to, if that's actually 120 to 129, now you're on the border of high blood pressure. And then that borderline goes all the way up to 139 over 89. So anywhere from just above 120 over 80 to 139 over 89 is considered pre-high blood pressure. So that's not good either. And then there's diabetes and pre-diabetes. And so we're talking about type 2 diabetes here. So you want to make sure, you probably know if you've been diagnosed, but way too often doctors say, well, you're pre-diabetic. That's okay, we'll watch it. No, you don't want to watch it. You want to actually do something about it. So what are the things you want to do? Diet-wise, you want to cut out the sugar. I know, you've heard this so many times, but I can't tell you how terrible sugar is for you. And there's really, we just can't argue the point. Nobody's going to tell you sugar is good for you. So you want to eliminate it. Try stevia, try Manuka honey. I know Manuka honey is very expensive, but it's delicious. So in moderation. But the facts are that your sweet tooth does change. If you stop feeding it, it shrinks and it can go away. So it really is just a discipline point. It's not impossible. And I've done it, and I'm genetically addicted to sugar. So believe me, I know the feeling. But cut out the sugar and cut out the starchy processed foods, and also any kind of ultra processed food, which usually is sugar or starch, but you really want to cut out all the non-real food, if you will. And then you want to add in exercise, and you want to watch your stress level. So I know it's easy to say all those things, but any forward motion is great, because while we know that insulin resistance is driving heart disease, our #1 killer, and it's increasing your risk of cancer. I'll go over which cancers in just a moment. Even though we know that that's the case and those are scary diseases, you can change your insulin resistance literally in a matter of weeks. You can make a concerted effort and you can no longer be insulin resistant in just a matter of weeks. And this has been proven. So this is very able to be altered if you put your mind to it. And then if you have any trouble, reach out. That's what we're here for. And we can get to the specifics of why you might be struggling. So as far as the cancer risk, after smoking, insulin resistance is the second biggest driver of cancer, which I didn't know it fell that high. So this was interesting research for myself as well. It drives breast cancer, ovarian cancer, colon cancer, pancreatic cancer, and prostate cancer. Thus far is what the research has stated. So if you think about friends who maybe have been diagnosed with some of these cancers, what was their diet like, and what was their weight like, and what was their waist circumference like? You probably see some of these associations. So the wonderful news is that when you're altering your insulin resistance and you're no longer insulin resistant due to diet and lifestyle changes and maybe some other issues that we need to address, like looking at your microbiome and looking at food sensitivities. And, these are the things that we do. But that's kind of the beauty of our program is patients come in for one thing, like hiatal hernia syndrome and associated digestive complaints, and they are insulin resistant, and then we normalize that, and they're like, wow, my blood pressure's gone and I don't need my blood pressure medication anymore, and I'm off my statin because my cholesterol has dropped, and my cardiologist is so happy, and my energy's better and my mood is better and all these things are better. It's because that's what happens when you treat the body as a whole, and it's really a beautiful thing to see. So that's what I love about it, because our medical model is so siloed, as I talk about. It's so compartmentalized, and it's like, oh, you have high cholesterol, here's your statin, and you have diabetes, and here's your metformin, and it's just that, and that's not getting the job done. That's not normalizing your health. That's not getting you back to the robust, healthy person you were in your 20s, let's say, and enjoying life and feeling great mentally, and stress load is down and you're sleeping great and you're achieving your goals in life. Those drugs don't do that, because they're just looking at you as a compartment. They're looking at you as an organ instead of looking at you as a whole. And it's that ability to look at you as a whole that will really get the job done, mostly naturally, getting you off medication, not putting you back on more medication. So isn't it a beautiful thing that normalizing your gut health, whether you have hiatal hernia syndrome or you have other digestive complaints, that's lowering your risk of cancer and lowering your risk of heart disease? I think that's cool. So I wanted to share that with you today. And by the way, if you like this content, please give the channel not only a thumbs up, but subscribe. We're trying to increase our subscribers so more people can see this content. I'll talk to you soon.